Okay, this is Federalist 39, Part 3. Notice here, these are some of the other places that you can find resources at. National Archives of the United States, and this is libraryofcongress.gov, loc.gov. Sorry about the reflection of the light there. loc.gov. I've mentioned them before. You can look at a lot of the primary sources for history of primary sources for doing research or learning more about the American Constitution and American founding. Okay, I'm going to read paragraph 4. Please watch the previous parts of this Federalist. It'll tell you more about it, more about what Madison is trying to say. Basically, as I told you before, as the Teaching American History website, Gordon Lloyd says, this paper is concerned with whether the Constitution, the new Constitution, passes the Republican form of government test and passes the federal system test. Okay, paragraph 4, on comparing the Constitution planned by the Convention with the standard here fixed, we perceived at once that it is, in the most rigid sense, conformable to it. The House of Representatives, like that of one branch at least of all the state legislatures, is elected immediately by the great body of the people. The Senate, like the present Congress and the Senate of Maryland, derives its appointment indirectly from the people. The President is indirectly derived from the choice of the people according to the example in most of the states. Okay, notice the line about the Senate. Till early 20th century, the Senate of the United States, the senators of the United States would be chosen by the state legislatures, not by the people directly. That's why he says that the members of the Senate are chosen by state legislatures. And this is like the state of Maryland. State of Maryland back then was the only state whose state senators were not chosen directly by the people. Even the judges, with all other officers of the Union, will, as the several states, be the choice, though a remote choice of the people themselves. The duration of the appointments is equally conformable to the Republican standard and to the model of state constitutions. Notice he's going to just talk about the similarities and the inspiration the constitutional writers got from different state constitutions and state models. As in all the states, and for the period of 2 years, as in the state of South Carolina. I'm sorry, I ruined this line, so let me reread it again. The House of Representatives is periodically elective, as in all the states, and for the period of 2 years, as in the state of South Carolina. The Senate is elective for the period of 6 years, which is but 1 year more than the period of the state of the Senate of Maryland, and but 2 more than that of the Senates of New York and Virginia. The President is to continue in office for the period of 4 years, as in New York and Delaware, the Chief Magistrate is elected for 3 years, and in South Carolina for 2 years. See, a lot of the states, even if they had a governor, they had councils that would supervise or watch what the governors did, and majority of the state legislatures elected their lower house members, like their house members, for short periods of time. So he's saying we've looked at that, we've been inspired by it, we've learned from it, but because the distance is such, the distance of the capital from different states is going to be such that you cannot get somebody to come up here and only serve for a year and go back, because it'll take them a long time to get here, get settled, learn the system. So he says because of that, we're electing the members of the House for 2 years, members of the Senate for 6, the President for 4 years. And he'll tell more about it later on in other Federalist Papers. But basically here he's saying we've got inspiration learned from different states. In the other states, the election is annual. In several of the states, however, no explicit provision is made for the impeachment of the chief magistrate. And in Delaware and Virginia, he's not impeachable till out of office. The President of the United States is impeachable at any time during his continuance in office. The tenure by which the judges are to hold their place is, as it unquestionably ought to be, that of good behavior. The tenure of ministerial offices generally will be a subject of legal regulation, conformably to the reason of the case and the example of the state constitution. So again, with the experience of different states, we have learned what works and we have included it in this constitution. Here's another one. He says, could any further proof be required of the Republican complexion of the system? The most decisive one might be found in its absolute prohibition of titles of nobility, both under the federal and the state governments, and in its express guarantee of the Republican form to each of the latter. It says the Constitution says that no titles of nobility shall be given to anybody. So right there it's saying that we are going to be a Republican form of government. It says you can't even think about it. Think about giving it title to anybody. And that's the case with the states too. And also in the Constitution, it says that the federal government, the national government, will guarantee a Republican form of government to every new state in the Union that wants to join the Union. He says, see, it's just kind of, we've shown it strongly that we just want a Republican form of government. Okay, now in the next paragraph, but it was not sufficient, say the adversaries of the proposed Constitution, for the convention to adhere to the Republican form. They ought with equal care to have preserved the federal form, which regards the Union as a confederacy of sovereign states, instead of which they have framed a national government, which regards the Union as a consolidation of the states. And it is asked by what authority this bold and radical innovation was undertaken. The handle which has been made of this objection requires that it should be examined with some precision. So he says, now that we have explained that this new constitution is going to be a Republican one, it's going to shape the government into a Republican form of government. He says those anti-federalists that are criticizing us are not saying again that this is a national sort of government. It is not a federal form of government or a confederal form of government. You are going to hold power in your hands at the nation's capital. It's going to be centrally run. So these are the accusations that they're making. He says, again, we've talked about this before in other papers, but it seems like here we have to again explain this to them so that they understand that we are not trying to consolidate power. We're not going to concentrate power in the hands of the central government. He says this criticism is crazy. So the next part we'll continue with the rest of this article.